Okay, in today's conversation, I want to talk about the Technology Vision 2022, which Accenture has just published, and the four tech trends everyone must be ready for this year. And to do this, I am joined once again by Paul Daugherty, who is the Group Chief Executive for Technology and the Chief Technology Officer at Accenture. Good to see you again, Paul.
It's great to be back with you, Bernard.
It feels literally like 2 months that we've spoken about the Tech Vision 2021. Where has all this time gone?
I don't know. Yeah, but it's interesting. We work on this year round. We have a team that works on our vision and is always looking at the technology trends and what's happening. So we're already working on next year, but the time does go by fast.
It's crazy. So you've just released the 2022 edition of your annual Tech Vision. Let's start by talking about some of the technology trends and developments you are seeing that are shaping the business and technology landscape.
Yeah, I'll start with maybe kind of the broad picture. We can zero in a little bit as we go. I think there's one uh, there's one really interesting thing that's happening that we characterize in our vision this year as the programmable world, and talk about the trend to where the world itself is being programmable. You know, a number of years ago, Mark Andreessen said software is eating the world, and I don't think that's quite right. The other software is kind of going across everything we do, but the world itself is becoming programmable in many ways. And this is Internet of Things and digital twins, but it's also things like biotech and smart materials. We talk in the vision about things like self-healing concrete and things. So the world itself can be transformed and changed in different ways. And that's a really important trend to understand that we can unpack a little bit more as we go through. Uh, and then you compute. Another trend is the continued acceleration of compute is probably the best way of
Mm.
saying it, the exponential acceleration. So it's not necessarily just Moore's law anymore. Moore's law was tracking the silicon improvement, but when you look at it, what's happening is we have the big cloud infrastructures. Obviously, we have things moving to the edge. We talk about it as a kind of the continuum or expanse of the cloud across all these dimensions. And I think we're just getting started with that. And then we've got these new forms of computing, quantum computing, which I think we talked about a little bit last time we talked, but increasingly interesting developments there, and with some other forms of biocomputing and other forms of computing that are interesting that you need to keep an eye on as you look at the lens for it's going, because some of these new ways of computing allow you to solve problems that might seem impossible today or might have seemed impossible, and that's why it's an important thing to look at. There's another whole thing around data and what's happening, and lots of interesting things in data to talk about. But one of them is what's happening with synthetic data
Mm.
and how synthetic data is being used and increasingly important. And you need to track this because one of the things we talk about in the vision is that when you look out to 2030, most of the data you might be managing as a company might be synthetic data, not the
Mm.
actual data you manage today. And then finally, the I think the one of the biggest things happening that's really foundational, and I think it's just coming into I think the lens is just coming into focus on this, but the future of the internet and what the future of the internet looks like and how profound of a change that will introduce as a new platform. And we can dive into this. I won't explain it all right now, but we can dive into this a little bit more. But the future of internet, and what some would characterize as Web3, is really a different platform. It's an evolution of today's platform, but it allows a whole different level of capability that then enables things like the metaverse. That we talk about in the headline of our vision this year.
Very good. So given that this is the headline of your vision, the metaverse and things like Web3 and the next evolution of the internet, they are absolutely core to your tech vision, which I think is entitled "Meet Me in the Metaverse." The first trend you explore is what you call Web Me, which is around the internet being reimagined. What exactly does that mean, and why do you think this is important? And what's Accenture's point of view on the metaverse and the opportunity it presents?
Yeah, this is I wish we had a whole day together, Bernard, to really unpack all this. But let me give you the kind of the short explanation of it and how we see it. So let's talk about the future of the internet first, real quickly. The future of the internet and Web3, what we're talking about is an evolution of capability of the internet. So we started with think back to the 90s, and it was, you could call it Internet of Data. It was about finding data on the internet. It was search was the killer app,
Mm.
at that point. Then we started adding, social and other capability. Mobility really came online in, like, say, 2000, say, 5 through 2015 or so, and that created kind of the Web 2 area where it became about social and mobility and things. It was kind of at that point kind of the Internet of Things or Internet of mobility. The Web 2 era hit us, and that launched. Facebook came into its own. The social companies, the shared economy companies, Airbnb and Uber and the like, exploded. With the Web 2 capability. Now with Web 3, there's two new. We have the data and the Internet of Things mobility. Now we're adding two new fundamental capabilities to the internet. One is the Internet of Place, which is the shared collaborative spaces and experiences that you can have, which some think of as the metaverse, but it's a part of the metaverse. And this is things like Microsoft's Mesh and Omniverse from NVIDIA, and these things that allow you to create these 3D experiences, or Roblox and other things that you see more in the consumer realm. And that's the Internet of Place, and creating the shared, collaboration experiences. And then there's the Internet of Ownership, which is really foundational, which is about new forms of identity and establishing unique identity for people and objects in the internet. And that's what enables cryptocurrency, enables new forms of commerce. It enables things like fungible and non-fungible tokens, new forms of products you can have on the internet. And this really is a game changer from a business perspective. And I think we're just starting to see what that all looks like. And the reason it's a game changer is you can think about Web 1 and Web 2 being digital wraparounds to the way we were doing things. Web 3 is getting into fundamentally getting, going digital inside and, unraveling and, entirely new ways of commerce and new ways of doing things. And I think it will be a bigger wave of digital transformation that's enabled than what we've seen to date. And what we, with the title of our vision, Meet Me in the Metaverse, it's really bringing that together. And there's a lot of fog of confusion around the metaverse. People hear little bits and pieces about it. You hear about everything from Coinbase and Bitcoin to Bored Apes and things like that, to Decentraland, to major companies announcing things like JP Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon, the CEO, announcing they're moving to the metaverse, and it's a $1 trillion opportunity. CVS announcing they want to be the first metaverse pharmacy. Chevron, the energy company, establishing their presence in the metaverse. McDonald's talking about the metaverse reshaping, the food services that they provide to customers. I could go on and on. But it's this fog of confusion about, well, businesses are moving. We got all these things we don't quite understand happening, and how do you make sense of it? And that's what we're doing with with Meet Me in the Metaverse, and this idea of the Metaverse Continuum is presenting a definition that we think is the right lens to look at it from a business perspective in terms of how you drive the business value. And I can unpack the continuum and define it a little bit if that would help.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I like that you bring those two together, because I find there's such a lot of confusion about Web3, Web 3.0, the decentralized web, the metaverse, extended reality. So the way I see it is quite often that the metaverse is the more immersive part of the internet, where you
Yeah.
use AR and VR to engage with other people somehow. And then the Web3 part is probably more the decentralized, blockchain enabled part of the metaverse.
Yeah.
So I like that you bring this together. So what are some of the concrete business opportunities then that you are seeing across some of your clients?
Yeah. And it's just a note. You just triggered a thought. This future of the internet, the way the way you just described it and unpacked it. We actually had Sir Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the World Wide Web, on the launch event where we talked about the vision. He was talking about how how this is an evolution in kind of the way you were describing it as well. In terms of what it means for business, that's where the continuum comes in, and our definition of it centers around this idea of the continuum, where the metaverse isn't just about the consumer and gaming. It's about the worker. It's about every role we play as people and extending it across the enterprise. And I'll come back with an example in a minute. So it's also about a continuum of of experiences. It's not just the virtual.
Yeah.
It's about how you bring the virtual together with the real world. We're
Mm.
not all going to be wearing these things, and nor would we want to wear them 24 hours a day. And so it's about blending the real and the virtual, together. I'll give you an example of that too. And uh, and also continuum across 2D and and 3D. So it's not just, again, not just the headsets, but flat screens as well, mobile devices and such all coming together, and a continuum of technologies, the things you mentioned, plus cloud and artificial intelligence and other things that play a key role in it. So that's how we define it. And the kinds of business opportunities we're seeing, it starts with more effective ways for people to engage. One example of that is our own Accenture metaverse. We call it the nth floor. It's like going to the nth floor in a building, so to speak, or any location around the world. And we have a part of that that's called One Accenture Park. This is where all of our Accenture employees come when they join the company. We've onboarded 150,000 employees through our metaverse. They, with in this case, with the headset, they put on the headset, they go to One Accenture Park, and why do they do that? It's not just a gaming thing, or it's not just to give people a fun gadget. It's because there's science around, the neuroscience around learning and how people can engage and retain information proves, and we've got, the data from 150,000 people, to verify this, that it's better learning about our company, what we do, the things they need to learn, the culture, etc. It's also about connections. I was talking to a woman just yesterday, one of our new joiners, and she said she was initially hesitant to put this on and go to our metaverse when she joined the company. But then she did, and she met somebody from Sweden, and she met somebody from Spain, and she met somebody from Asia, and and they became and they met through that onboarding experience. And now they continue to go back and meet in the metaverse. That's forming human connections, and that's one opportunity for every company today, is using it from that perspective. The metaverse presents an opportunity to change how you engage with customers. That's what JP Morgan Chase is doing by their experiment in the business they're moving with. I believe it's with Roblox in their case. I'm sorry, like theirs was actually with Decentraland, I believe. And that's changing the engagement with the customers. It's new products that you offer. Gucci, some may have heard the story. Gucci has a non-fungible token, which is a blockchain, based, uniquely verifiable digital product that they have. They did an NFT of one of their purses that sold for more online, in the metaverse, than it sells for in a real store. So changing the way products are being developed. I can give you a lot of more examples of how products are transforming, but it also changes how products are made, and that's where digital twins come in. Work like BMW has talked about with their digital twins, or Mars, building digital twins throughout their manufacturing and supply chain. Um, it really transforms the way you can do it. And you can say, well, that's just a digital twin; it's not the metaverse. But then when you think about the digital twin and how a worker uses the digital twin to understand that, supply and demand and patterns, and then maybe puts on their augmented reality headset and changes the plant operating characteristics to operate more efficiently based on that digital twin, and then goes back and checks how it's going. This continuum of experiences is important, and things like digital twins cannot be isolated from the way you think about other metaverse initiatives you have as a company. That's what we mean by the continuum, and that's just a small taste of some of the opportunity we see for business.
Very good. And I guess it's safe to say that Accenture is bullish about the future metaverse opportunity. So far, so that you've formed a dedicated metaverse group within the company to help guide your clients on their metaverse journeys. Can you tell us a little bit more about that group and what they offer?
Yeah, if metaverse technology is you cover technology, so you know this, and your audience does as well. But technology is fascinating because when anything new comes along, there's always parts of it that have been there for a while. With cloud or anything else, the same was true. So with metaverse, it's not like this is just brand new today. We've been doing work in aspects of the metaverse for years. We've been working in virtual reality and augmented reality for over a decade. Starting our research labs even before that. We have a leading blockchain group doing a lot of work around blockchain and for currencies and all types of other things. We've got the leading digital agency capability through Accenture Interactive that has the 3D artists and graphic designers and everything that put this together. So what we're doing, so we have a lot of these capabilities, and it's not necessarily new to us from that perspective, but we see the need to pull this together more clearly to address our clients' need for speed and action. So we formed the Metaverse Continuum business group. It's sponsored by myself. I lead our Accenture's technology group, as you said, and it's also by David Droga, who leads Accenture Interactive. So because it's really blending the technology and the experience. And we're pulling the teams together to do the kinds of things I was talking about earlier to accelerate what our clients move to the metaverse. We're blending that with our industry team. So in every industry, we've got the use cases and frameworks and and kind of accelerators of the vision to get to where our clients need to go and for them to envision and shape what their future needs to look like. So it's pulling all those pieces together. Again, already a sizable set of people that are working in the area, and this is really accelerating that move.
Great. The other trend you're talking about, you touched on this a little bit earlier, is programmable world, where
Yeah.
you talk about how technology um, is now being interwoven into our physical world. Do you want to expand on this a little bit?
Yeah, no, I think that's the I touched on it earlier. Like it's not just software eating the world; it's the world then because it's the programmable world. I think is the more interesting part of this is how do you the world itself become more programmable and there's a whole so the digital twin is a key part of this. Like as companies are doing digital twins of manufacturing or their transportation aircraft or transportation systems and such, it really is in essence making the world programmable. You can through your digital twin understand how do you do things more effectively and such. And so that's something that I think people probably understand. But the other aspect of it is how in this technology revolution we're in, technology is moving through other domains of science in a way, information technology, computer, digitized, computer technology is moving through other domains of science, making the world more programmable.
Mm.
So, for example, in bio and biology and biotech, it's about artificial intelligence and cloud and other technologies infusing the science of biotech and allowing the creation of new compounds and new materials more effectively. That's in the new book that I'm coming out with. We talk about Moderna as an example and why they were able to innovate so fast with the messenger RNA vaccine. And it was because of the capability they had. So that's part of the programmable world is how computer technology, the digital revolution, is infecting to some. It's a bad metaphor because I'm talking about biologies, but it's moving to other and changing other areas of science and making the world itself more programmable so we can create vaccines faster. Smart materials that can materials smart clothing's been around for a while. It's not necessarily new. Haptic capability embedded in clothing, color, the ability to download and program the wardrobe you're wearing so you can have the same shirt on but have a different design for work in the day versus going out at night. All these things are coming to reality, and it's really extends the capability of what businesses can do, and has a lot of benefits like sustainability benefits and other things as you think about the new ways you can conceptualize and view the products you build and the way you build them. And that's why the programmable world becomes exciting. And things like another example that we're working with some groups on is smart concrete. So concrete that actually knows how to heal itself, it can find its own cracks and heal itself. Things like this are really about how the world becomes programmable and how the digital technology that probably many of this audience know is really going to change the whole world, not just the way that technology is used in companies.
Yeah, and I like how you bring some of these things together, because programmable world for many is algorithms and digital. But I think nowadays with nanotechnology, we now have the ability to program physical objects and
Right.
create self-healing paint and concrete and so on. So yeah,
Yeah.
super interesting. The other trend you talk about is the unreal, which I guess brings together some of the fears and concerns about AI and other technology and how they might be used to create negative things like deep fakes and malicious bots and even passable humans. Do you want to expand on this a little bit?
Yeah, that's a really important one, and you're exactly right. I mean, every technology has the two sides, but this one we've heard a lot about the downsides of through deep fakes and such. Yeah, so synthetic data, synthetic technologies talking about how do you create these either create new data or create new kind of experiences artificially through technology. The use of GPTs, transformers to create deepfakes is an example of this. And there was just recently, I think it was this week in the news, the um, the the deep fake of President Zelensky announced, announcing surrender, which was obviously just a completely contrived deep fake of him, deep fake video of him, but incredibly realistic. And that's the power of the technology, but also shows the downside when misappropriated in that way. And but there's a huge opportunity and upside. I was just talking to a startup. It's a very, very interesting capability they have where the training is done by digital humans that are synthetic. So it's a very positive deep fake that in that sense. So it's not a negative in terms of the way it's really helping people more get access to the software, use things more effectively. There's tremendous opportunities and examples of that as well. So this is, as always, this is about getting the balance right and looking at the opportunity to do it well as the responsible point of avoiding the pitfalls. And so there's a lot of work going on around authenticity and how do you stamp things for authenticity and be able to diagnose the fakes. A lot of work going on with that, with generative adversarial networks and things like that'll hopefully give us some technology solutions as well. But it highlights one of the underlying themes we talk about in our vision this year that's really important, and I want to make sure everybody hears, is responsible metaverse, and making sure that we as leaders and we as business people and technologists building out this metaverse, we by design from the start do it in a responsible way. Trust is a key element of that, and sustainability is another element. We can dive into each of those a little bit if you're interested. But trust gets to how do you know whether something's fake or real, and how do you build a trust with consumers in the right way? How do you build trust in parents that they're going to let their children use the metaverse? All of those sorts of dimensions we need to address. And then sustainability is getting into the carbon and other consequences that some have focused on a lot with the metaverse. There are solutions to, but it's incumbent on us to understand this and navigate to the future in the right way.
Yeah, and I think once you combine the unreal and the metaverse, it becomes exciting and scary at the same time.
Yeah, yeah,
Where I now have my own avatar, which I launched recently, and this is great. I've got me with looking like me, talking like me, sounding like me on my YouTube channel, and my Instagram and TikTok, creating content without me having to go into a studio to do
yeah,
it. So I can just simply write content, and it then turns it into video, which is fantastic for me.
yeah. And there's another, and just to on that thread, Bernard, there's one other element of synthetic that I think is really important is using synthetic data,
Hmm.
understanding synthetic data, and how you use it in your organization. I was just reading a report from an analyst, one of the analyst firms, that said by 2030, which isn't that far away, the vast majority, I think it was about 80% of your data that you manage as a company, will be synthetic, artificially created data. And just one example of why that, or two examples maybe why that's the case. If you think about the metaverse, we've scanned and simulated all of many of our offices and our research labs around the world. So that's synthetic data. It's the scanned virtual representation of our offices. That's very important data for us as we operate in the metaverse. Another example is if you're running a manufacturing process that has very low defects, you might not have enough real data to train a visual inspection algorithm on what the defects look like. So you might need to synthetically create the training data to train the AI algorithm. And I would argue that as we go forward, a lot of the AI training data and other testing data will be synthetically generated. And that's the kind of thing we need to understand better as an industry.
Yeah, no, and to some extent, it will democratize access to machine learning and AI, because at the moment, companies that have the biggest volumes of data have a huge advantage. In the future, we can create amazing faces. I've done a few conversations with companies that now use this as in-car technology, for example, where you need to train the AI to read emotions, and they can make sure that this is completely representative, that all ethnicities are represented, and so on, using synthetic data, which is great. So yeah, I completely agree. the final trend you talk about is computing the impossible, where you talk about things like quantum computing and advancements in supercomputing and how this will eventually help us solve previously intractable problems. So, do you want to expand on this and look at some of the opportunities, how this might reshape businesses?
Yeah, and this is this kind of trend line that will continue to see for decades of increasing forms of computing and power of computing altogether. So that's what we're talking about in this trend. On the one hand, high performance computing, I think, is something that's been around for a while that people understand, and there's tremendous capabilities just from the continual advances in high performance computing as we've known it for a while. But the more interesting thing maybe is things like quantum computing, which we talk about in computing the impossible. How these again, new forms of computing are going to change what you're able to compute, and be able to solve new problems. And the two areas, or a couple of the areas that are really interesting for quantum right now. One is in quantum chemistry, and
Mm.
another is in biology, in kind of molecular analysis and disease characteristics and such. And we're doing work with clients in those areas, looking at applying quantum algorithms and quantum computing to solve what would have been unsolvable problems, even with the high performance compute and cloud and other environments. And so it's starting. That's the advice I give companies is quantum computing isn't something. You're not going to replace your data center with the quantum computing, or not going to replace your cloud with quantum computing. But if you look for the unsolvable or difficult to solve problems and see if they're of the nature that can be solved via quantum computing. That's one place to start with it. The
Mm.
other thing that's out there is quantum cryptography, and it's a matter of time before RSA-based encryption is able to be broken by quantum computing. And the U.S. government issued an executive order on this recently, stating that agencies needed to have their plan in place to remediate for post-quantum cryptography, and that's going to spread through the commercial sector very rapidly. So that's an example of some of this technology moving from the future to the present more quickly, that we need to recognize and get on top of. And then there's another set of technologies in the realm of biocomputing, which depart from quantum is already departing from silicon, and biocomputing departs even more, in that it's really DNA based compute and storage, using the complexity of DNA to encode information. And it's millions of times more dense than silicon is. So it's as tiny as those USB drives and things are that we use, that currently, and as much as that's as much as we've seen that miniaturize, the compression and the what you can store using DNA-based storage is even more incredible, and it doesn't have the decaying impact that silicon has. It has much longer lifespan. So again, that's a little bit further in the future. You're not going to use DNA-based storage in your data center tomorrow, but over the next decade, you're going to see things like this have more impact, and you need to look ahead as to when those are going to have unique implications for you and your industry.
Yeah, one of the fascinating facts I heard about storing data on DNA is that you could, in theory, store the entire world's data on a single teaspoon of DNA, which is
Yeah,
pretty exciting stuff.
yeah, yeah.
So looking across your tech vision, then, what are your hopes and predictions of how these trends will change business and society over the coming years?
It's a great question. I think let me do the business part first. I think the business, it will transform business. I really do believe that this is a bigger wave of digital transformation to come, following from what I've talked about as the future of the internet and the metaverse. And the programmable world is kind of comes together with the metaverse when we talk about the continuum, as we describe it. When you think about that, this is the next wave of digital transformation. And I think the challenge I would put out there for businesses is, do you want to wake up in a future where the worlds were defined by and for someone else, by your competitor, or do you want to help shape that world? And that's where we are. So you might not think, just like in 1999, I remember talking to a lot of companies, and they said, I'll never need a web page. Or they might, I have a corporate homepage, that's all I need, I don't need any other web presence. And I think it's kind of that moment like that a little bit now for metaverse. It's not entirely clear what you need to do, maybe, but it is clear you need to do something. And that's why I talk to companies about thinking big and reimagining what you might do. Start small and focused, and then get ready to scale. scale fast, and think about how you can be a shaper of the rules. There's so many companies I've talked to over the last decade plus that have just talked about how they missed Amazon disrupting commerce in the Web 1 area that came, or
Mm.
how much they regret Airbnb transformed the lodging and experience market in the Web 2 era. Now is the time to be the disruptor in the Web 3 area and lead your business into it and shape
Mm.
those future worlds. So that's what it means for business, in my view. For society, I think there's tremendous benefit and value for this, provided we do it right.
Mm.
That's going to take a lot of work to avoid some of the downsides we've talked about here. But think about the potential for education. I'm working with a company now that's looking at a metaverse, the way to use the metaverse that'd be transformational in terms of the way that children learn and the way that we could do education. Think about the way we can bring society together by giving people experiences. Again, not by wearing headsets all day like in Ready Player One, but by bringing people together in new ways, by having really more discrete ownership of our own data on the internet, which is what the Web3 type of technology allows, more verifiable authenticity of information, which is again what we're trying to get to with Web3. And I think there's tremendous societal benefits. And now's the time for us to work together across different stakeholder groups to make sure we realize that positive future.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for taking us through your Tech Vision 2022.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.